At Christmas dinner, my 9-year-old daughter was seated alone next to the trash can, on a folding chair. Everyone acted like it was normal, so she got up, walked over to me, and said, "Can you do the thing you said you'd do if it felt bad again?" So I did. 5 minutes later, my mom started screaming, "My name is Graham. I'm married to Nina, and I'm a dad to Leah. I legally adopted her when she was 3, but I've been in her life since she was 2. She's mine. Always has been. We don't use the word step in our house, not because we're pretending, because we're not. She calls me dad, and every time I hear it, I still feel it land in my chest like a little miracle. From the start, I promised her she'd never have to fight for her place in this family, that no one would ever make her feel like a guest in her own life. I couldn't keep that promise. Christmas at my parents' house is always a bit much. Think polished silverware themed centerpieces, coordinated outfits for the grandkids. My mom likes to say she curates joy. What she really means is that everyone plays a part, and if you don't know your lines, you're the problem. We showed up right on time, Nina, Leah, and me. Leah wore a red velvet dress with gold buttons. She was proud of it. She had even practiced walking in her new patent leather shoes because she didn't want to slip. She walked in carrying a small box she'd wrapped herself. It was for my mom. Glitter paper, a crooked ribbon, and one of those gift tags that just says, "To Grandma, from Leah," in careful handwriting. The kids' table was already set up, fancy plates, snowman cups, mini crackers with gold foil wrapping. Each place had a hand-lettered name card, except one. At the far end, near the swinging kitchen door, there was a folding chair. No card, no cracker, no plate, just a napkin and a fork. It was pushed in next to the trash can, as if someone realized last minute they were one seat short and didn't want to mess up the look. Leah stopped walking, just stood there, holding her little gift box in both hands, staring at the chair. No one said anything. My mom called across the room, "Oh good, you made it. We were just about to start." Nina's hand slid into mine. Her grip was tight. Leah sat down, quietly, smoothed her dress, and tucked the gift under her chair. I watched her try to smile when Jenna's twins shouted something across the table. She didn't answer, just looked at her plate like maybe that would keep her from crying. I didn't say anything right away. I just watched. I watched my sister take pictures of her kids in their matching sweaters. I watched my mom show off the floral centerpiece she made from scratch. I watched my dad drink his wine and look everywhere except at Leah. And I watched Leah pretend this was fine. Then she stood up, walked across the room, past 3 people who avoided eye contact. She stopped at my chair and looked up at me. "Can you do the thing you said you'd do if it felt bad again?" she asked. I looked at her for a long second. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yeah, I'm sure." I stood up, tapped my glass. The room went still. My mom looked over like I was about to give a sweet little speech. Something warm, something about togetherness. I said, "To the last family event we'll ever attend." And I raised my glass. No one moved. My mom froze, mid-smile. My sister's mouth dropped open like she was waiting for a punchline. My dad blinked twice and stared at his plate. I walked over to my parents' end of the table, placed a sealed envelope between their plates, and said, "Merry Christmas." Then I turned, took Leah's hand, and left. No one followed. No one stopped us. We were almost to the car when I heard it. A scream, my mom's. Loud enough to make someone across the street flick their blinds, but I didn't turn around, because Leah didn't. Leah didn't ask what was in the envelope. Not that night. Not the next morning either. She didn't need to. She knew what it meant to hand over a sealed truth and walk away. The morning after Christmas, we made pancakes. Leah asked if she could stir the batter. She added too many chocolate chips, then called it deliberate overkill. Nina laughed, and I felt something loosen in my chest. That's how it was with Leah. She didn't sulk. She didn't explode. She just made it quietly obvious when something hurt. It would have been easier, honestly, if she had thrown a fit, but instead she carried things like she expected to, and that broke me more than anything. You should know, Leah wasn't some distant relative my family had to suddenly adjust to. I'd been with Nina since Leah was 2. I met her when she was still calling every adult Mama by accident. The first time she reached for my hand in a parking lot, I just about forgot how to breathe. By the time she was 3, I was the one reading bedtime stories and cutting up apples the way she liked. I was the one she looked for when she had a bad dream, We got married when Leah was 4. She held our rings in her tiny palm and told me my shoelaces didn't match. She was right. When I legally adopted her, she asked me if that meant we could finally have matching last names. I said yes. She said, "Okay, then it's real now." But to my family, it never was. Not really. They didn't say it out loud. They never had to. It was in the way my mom introduced her as Nina's daughter at family events, the way my sister called her your kid, like she was correcting someone. It was in the group photos where someone always forgot to call her forward until the last second. The holiday cards that said to all the grandkids but only had 4 names inside. Leah wasn't one of them. They didn't hate her. That would have been easier to name. They just left her out over and over, softly, subtly, like she didn't quite count. And every year, I told myself they'd come around, that people needed time, that this kind of family took adjusting to. But Leah noticed. She noticed when my mom bought coordinated Christmas pajamas for the other kids, but handed her a plain red set with a broken tag. She noticed when her birthday was combined with her cousins because it's easier that way, and her name was written on the cake in smaller letters, squeezed into the corner like a postscript. She noticed when she made a Mother's Day card for my mom and never got a thank you, just a distracted smile and a comment about how glitter gets everywhere. I tried to explain it away. "They're just forgetful," I said. "They're not doing it on purpose." But kids aren't stupid. They know when they're being managed instead of embraced. And then one night, maybe a year ago, Leah asked me a question that I still think about when I can't sleep. We were packing for a weekend trip, just the 3 of us, and she held up a too small sweater that had been a hand-me-down from my sister's daughter. The tag was still on. I remembered my mom had given it to her for Christmas. Leah held it up, turned it over, then said, "They don't really know me, do they?" I said, "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "They don't know what I like, or my size, or my favorite color. I think they just guess." I didn't have an answer. I just sat on the edge of the bed while she folded the sweater back up. Then she looked at me and said, "Is it like I'm not really your kid to them?" I don't think I've ever felt more like a failure as a father than I did in that moment. That night, I promised her something. I told her that if she ever felt unwelcome again, truly unwelcome, she could tell me and I'd handle it, that she didn't have to shrink to fit someone else's version of family, that she wouldn't have to ask twice. She just had to say the word, and this Christmas she did, which brings me back to the envelope. Inside there was a photo, one from the day her adoption was finalized. She was wearing a blue sundress and holding a stuffed turtle. Nina took the picture while Leah sat on my lap outside the courthouse. We both had chocolate smudges on our mouths from the donuts she insisted on getting afterward. On the back of the photo, I'd written, "This is the day we became a family. You just never treated her like it." Beneath the photo, there was a letter, typed. No yelling, no insults, just truth. I told them I had noticed everything, that Leah had too, that I wasn't asking for apologies anymore. I was drawing a line. That if they couldn't love my daughter like family, then they didn't deserve to keep calling me theirs. Then came the invoices. I attached a breakdown, a literal spreadsheet, contributions to joint gifts she wasn't named on, decorations and food for family events where she sat on the sidelines, checks to help cover their heating bill last winter after they'd accidentally left Leah out of the family Christmas card, donations to cousin birthday parties she wasn't invited to. I ended it with this: "You used my money to fund a version of this family that didn't include my daughter. That ends now." Nina didn't read it ahead of time, not because I kept it from her, but because she trusted me to say what needed to be said, and Leah never asked what it said. She just trusted me to mean it. We didn't hear anything for the rest of the day. No texts, no missed calls, no dramatic follow-ups, just silence. But I knew that wouldn't last. At first there was nothing, no texts, no phone calls, no "are you okay" or "can we talk?" Just silence, which, if you know my family, was almost funny. These are the same people who once created a spreadsheet to organize dessert contributions for Thanksgiving, the same people who text in all caps when someone forgets a birthday. Silence from them was a strategy. I told myself it might stay that way, that maybe they finally understood what the letter meant, but of course they didn't. It started about a week later. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I got a Venmo request from my sister, $450. The caption just said, "Birthday for Owen, everyone pitching in, same as last year. Owen is her son. He's turning 10. We hadn't been invited to his party. I knew that because Leah had seen the photos of the invitation on his class bulletin board, wrapped candy canes, gold font, a dinosaur in a party hat, the kind of invite you don't forget to send by accident. Still, they asked for money. I didn't respond. I didn't pay it. I didn't even decline. I just left it there. 3 days later, my mom emailed Nina, not me, Nina. The subject line was, "Just a reminder." Inside was a note that said they hadn't received our usual contribution toward the winter heating bill. My parents live in the same house I grew up in, and for the past few years, I'd been quietly helping with their utilities. Never made a big deal about it. Just sent the money every January and October. I thought I was helping. Apparently now it was expected. Nina didn't answer. She just forwarded it to me and said, "I guess your mom's finally talking to us." I didn't reply to that either. Then came the texts, first from my sister. "Hey, just wondering if you guys are still coming to Dad's birthday? Want to get a head count for the cake?" Then, "I assume Leah still likes vanilla? Or does she eat cake now?" I stared at that one for a while. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "Graham, I don't know what the letter was about, but this is getting ridiculous. Leah is welcome. She always has been. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." Molehill. She really said molehill. That was the word she used for a child being seated by a trash can on Christmas. I didn't answer. I wanted to. I wanted to send a photo of Leah's face at that table. I wanted to list every year, every slight, every time they looked through her like she wasn't real. But I didn't. I've learned that the people most determined to misunderstand you will always find a way. Instead, I stayed quiet, and the silence started to unnerve them. 2 weeks later, we got a card in the mail. It was addressed to Leah. Inside was a photo of her and my parents at a pumpkin patch from years ago. She must have been 5. My mom had written on the back, "You'll always be family. Love, Grandma." No apology, no context, just a photo and a sentence that tried to rewrite the past. Leah opened it at the table. She looked at it for a long time, then turned it over again. She didn't ask what it meant. She just said, "I don't think she ever called me that before." That night, I sat down with her and said, "You don't have to respond. You don't have to do anything." She nodded. "I know." She didn't hang it on the fridge. She didn't put it in her drawer. She left it on the counter and went to bed. Then, a few days later, it escalated. There was a knock at the door. Nina looked through the peephole and turned to me, wide-eyed. "It's your mom." I opened the door just far enough to step outside and close it behind me. She smiled like nothing had happened, like we were neighbors catching up after a long trip. "I just wanted to see Leah," she said. I didn't say anything. "I thought maybe we could talk, just the two of us, clear the air." "There's nothing to clear," I said. She sighed. "Graham, this is ridiculous. She's a child. She doesn't know what she's doing." "She knows exactly what she's doing," I said. "And so do you. You're turning her against us." "No," I said. "You did that all by yourself." She tried to push past me, said something about being her grandmother, about having a right to speak to her. I stepped in front of the door. "No," I said. "You don't." Her face changed then, like something cold slipped in behind her eyes. She looked at me like I was the stranger now. "I raised you better than this," she said. "You raised me to stay quiet," I said. "That's not the same thing." Then I went inside and locked the door. Nina was standing in the hallway. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. That night, we told Leah we were done, officially. No more events, no more messages, no more maybe next time or just let it go. She didn't argue. She just said, "Good." And that was it. But it wasn't really. Because something was coming, something none of us saw coming, and it would make everything else look like the warm-up act. We thought we were done, after Christmas, after the letter, after the Venmo requests, the guilt trips, and the photo in the mail, after my mother showed up at our door, pretending nothing had happened, after Leah said good with so much clarity I could barely breathe. We thought that was the end. Then Eric showed up, Leah's biological father. I hadn't seen him in 7 years. Not since the custody hearing where he lost all parental rights, permanently and irrevocably. It wasn't even a close case. There was a restraining order at one point, then a judge's ruling, then silence. He hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't tried to see Leah. As far as I knew, he didn't even know where Nina and I lived. That was the entire point. And then one Thursday afternoon, I opened the front door because I thought a package had arrived, and he was standing on the porch. Older, rougher, same look in his eyes, like the world owed him something and he'd come to collect. Eric? I said, already stepping halfway out and pulling the door behind me. He smiled, or something close to it. Heard you've been pretending you're her dad. My stomach dropped. I don't know who told you where we live, I started. Your mom, he said. Like it was casual, like it was normal. Said she reached out for the good of the family. Said she thought Leah might need her real father. I didn't punch him. I didn't shout. I just stood there stunned, while my hands curled into fists. You have no rights, I said. None. This conversation shouldn't even be happening. I've got rights if I want 'em, he said. And if I don't, well, maybe you'd rather keep it that way. It wasn't a threat. Not directly, but it landed like one. He glanced past me toward the front window. She here? I stepped fully out and closed the door behind me. You need to leave. He crossed his arms. Look, I'm not trying to start something. I just think it's fair I get to see her, or be compensated for stepping aside. There it was, the real reason. Nina opened the door just a crack and looked out. When she saw him, she froze. Her hand went to her chest like she'd been punched there. Leah came down the stairs behind her, holding a book. She saw Nina's face and stopped. Go back upstairs, Nina said quietly. Right now. Eric didn't see her. Thank God. I stepped forward. You need to leave this property. Or what? So I called the police. They showed up in under 10 minutes. Long enough for him to keep talking. Long enough for him to say things I won't repeat. Long enough for Leah to hear enough through the floorboards to ask later, is that man going to take me away? I sat down on the edge of her bed that night, held her hand, showed her the adoption certificate again. Your name is on this. Mine is. The judge's is. His isn't and never will be. Nina and I filed for a protective order the next day. We printed of everything. Old court rulings, emails, texts. We included the details from the police report. The judge granted it immediately. When I told my parents, I wasn't calm. I didn't pretend to be. I sent them a single message. You put Leah in danger. This isn't just about feelings anymore. It's about safety. You made your choice. So did we. They didn't respond. But a week later, Jenna sent a message. Can't believe you destroy your own family over a mistake. I just deleted it and blocked her number. Then we listed the house. Didn't make a big announcement. Just started packing. Leah didn't ask why. She just started folding her clothes into boxes and labeled them herself. She wrote, books I love on one, jackets I hate on another. We moved 2 months later, new city, new school, no forwarding address, no family photos packed, no holiday dishes, no guilt. We told Leah we'd make new traditions. She asked if we could make ones where everyone gets a name card. I said yes, and that was the last time we talked about any of it. Not because we forgot, because we didn't need to explain it anymore. Fast forward 1 year, Leah had to write a school essay about someone who changed your life. She wrote about me. She didn't show it to me right away, just left it on the kitchen table with a sticky note that said, you'll probably cry. She was right. She wrote, he's not my real dad because of paperwork. He's my real dad because he saw me when other people didn't. And he stayed. That's all I ever wanted her to know, that she was never invisible in this house, and never will be. Still, do you think I did the right thing? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories like this one, subscribe and turn on notifications.